Okay, we welcome you, sir. Dr. Manoj Kumar Pathak is an assistant professor of English at Arkajan University, Jamshedpur, and a multilingual poet, editor, reviewer, and translator. He has his doctoral degree on the topic, The Novels of Amitabh Ghosh Towards an Interpretation of Narrative Aesthetics. His research and academic interest lies in Indian fiction, aesthetics of narratives, post colonialism, Indian philosophy and literature, nation and nationalism in India, youth and education, and cultural studies. He has a teaching experience of nearly 14 years. Dr. Pathak has 10 books of self composed poetry to his credit in 5 languages other than research papers and conference proceedings, and hundreds of poems and articles in news dailies, magazines, and newsletters. He has twice been invited to deliver lecture on Indian poetry and contemporary Indian literature by Dhaka University, Bangladesh, and Nandini Patchakra, Dhaka, Bangladesh, an international literary forum. He is presently engaged with translating Tagore's Geet Bitan, and along with that, he is compiling his 11 books of poems, which would be his third anthology of Urdu Ghazal. He has been editing an international journal of art, culture, language, literature, The Challenge, for the last 17 years. Furthermore, he has been associated with All India Radio Jamshedpur for last 19 years to broadcast his self-composed poems and deliver talks on literary themes. He is currently supervising 4 PhD research scholars. Dr. Pathak has been awarded by reputed literary forums for his contributions for creative writings. Sir, we welcome you. The platform is all yours. We were eagerly waiting for your deliberation. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Saket. Respected Professor in charge, Karim City College, Head of the Department English, Dr. S.M. Yahya Ibrahim, sir, faculty members, respectively, Dr. Neha Tiwari, ma'am, Dr. Basudhara Roy, ma'am, Professor A.K. Das, sir, Mr. Saket Kumar, and all others who are engaged with this academic pursuit, directly or indirectly. I convey my regards to all the seniors and my affection to the young learners. Is my screen there on? Yeah, yes, sir. Is it visible?
You are visible, but is there any PPT also?
Yeah, of course. Achha.
PPT is not visible. You are visible. Now it is coming. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is now okay. थोड़ा नीचे का कट रहा है, the last part. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, it is visible, sir.
Okay. So let me congratulate the department to select this important area of deliberation, that is the Renaissance and the new epistemology. And I have been assigned to talk on Renaissance and physical sciences. So before going to the heart of this topic, let me put forward that the Renaissance was, of course, an important event in European history that stretched from the 14th century to the 17th century. It was preceded by the Middle Ages in Europe and eventually led to the major events of the Age of Enlightenment. In historical terms, it is important because it led to a major shift in European thought and worldview. While it is considered to have begun in the city-states of the Italian peninsula in the 14th century, the main ideas of the movement eventually spread to all of Europe by the 16th century. Now, if we open up the discussion, we need to understand what this particular word means, Renaissance. You, my young learners, might have heard this before my lecture, but then also there are certain points which we need to revise once and again, and that is the origin of this word, that we have taken it from Latin, renasci, which certainly means to be born again. So it directs to the meaning of rebirth, and it is connected with the rebirth of arts, I mean discussions on arts, science, and European society. It was a time of transition from the ancient world to the modern world, of course, because the cosmos was alive with a universal consciousness with which people could interact in various ways, and the influence of interaction was that people could find newer avenues of life. Therefore, it encouraged curiosity, investigation, and discovery. These are the very basic, three terms which we should use in terms of understanding this, period and the happenings of this period. Because new developments in communication helped to speed discovery, the spread of knowledge, and the exchange of ideas. Now, during the Renaissance, great advances occurred in geography, in astronomy, chemistry, physics, mathematics, manufacturing, anatomy, and engineering. Of course, in arts and in literature, in all sorts of economical deliberations also. But we are basically today pointing towards the events that happened in the field of science, especially physical sciences. So this was a period of seeking revitalization of culture through re-emphasizing classical texts and philosophies. And it was also an effort to expand and interpret them, creating their own style of art, philosophy, and scientific inquiry. Now, here I take a name of Mr. Mary Bos Hall, who coined the term scientific renaissance. He was the person who is given the credit to find out this word, designated to the early phase of the scientific revolution, that is 1450, 1630. Now, before that, again, I would like to take you to the causes of its emergence. Why did it, happen that people, after the Middle Ages, after the feudalism, after some, religious, traditional, conventional practices, people started to think in various ways. What were the different, reasons, the causes? Now, the first cause, I do not particularly find that only the fall of Constantinople is the reason behind the emergence of Renaissance. There are certain other causes, and the first cause is the increased interaction. If we deny all these causes, I don't think the understanding of this period will be proper and complete. Now, we know that the Silk Route, you can see the picture of the Silk Route starting from China and going towards the west, and taking, of course, the northern part of India, and then Persia, Arabia, and the European part. Now, this connection shows that there was interaction at that point of time when people had an opportunity to interact on different issues and ideas, and therefore there was a scope of discourses on different levels. Of course, that was not highlighted, but this is a cause, and it was for a longer period. It's not for a shorter period, rather it's for a long period when there is a continuous interaction. Of course, it was because of commercial trade relationships. The second important cause is the crusades. There were different crusades. We know, I'm not going into the details of this, but these factors cannot be denied, and that's why I'm discussing on these, that the crusades, that was the religious crusades, the Christians and the Islamics, the Jews, and the Judaism, all these religious conflicts was also a factor, because these conflicts created opportunities and scopes of interaction again. People met together, people had ideas, and for due to these crusades, they had to travel for a longer, for distant places, and that opened the scope of another level of interaction. Again, the third reason is rediscovery of ancient texts. Now, we simply say that after the Renaissance, the rediscovery of ancient texts was there. No, in any historical event cannot be pointed out with dates and years. Of course, people had started doing this. So this became also cause, and later on, it became a trend. So the practice of rediscovering the ancient texts took the position of a continuity, we can say, later on. Okay, when the Renaissance, the thinking of rebirth, the thinking of revitalization was at the peak. So we can take the name of Petrarch, who was highly interested to, go into the antique texts and study and find out the different philosophies, the different streams of knowledge, and create a body of newer wisdom, we can say. We have also the reason of innovations, and Gutenberg not be forgotten. I will talk of him later also. So when the evolution of printing press. So once we are seeing that Petrarch, scholars like Petrarch, not only Petrarch, but he was a major scholar who was firstly interested in translating or bringing out the antique wisdom to the forefront. So these people were circulated among the mass through printing press. Through newer publications, through press, and people could study, read, and find out that the ancient writings, the ancient books, texts had so many things to understand and to deliberate upon. Next, the Renaissance art. Now, art also invited people to think about rebirth, to leave all those traditional and customary practices and thought processes. Why? Because the art of the Renaissance period, the initial art, started with realism and human form. So art motivated towards realism. Focusing or presenting realism and human form. So human came to the center. Here we can see that how human, through art, we travel a journey of humanity. So that's also a reason, a cause for the emergence of Renaissance. And of course, there is a very major reason, that is Black Death. We rarely talk about all these reasons, but this is, I find it an important factor of the emergence of Renaissance. Why? Black Death was a great pandemic. We are now in the pandemic situation for the last 1.5 years, and we can simply relate to the position or the situations of pandemics which happened centuries back, because at that point of time there was no such discoveries, no such inventions, no such facilities to facilitate health services, right? And that this mass death due to the pandemic challenged religious beliefs. Why? Because earlier human beings were totally controlled. I mean to say, the human emotions, the human findings, the human thought processes were totally captivated by the church. So church could not give recess to the inquiring mind, that why so many people died. The popes or the priests, the bishops started to tell that no, God will come and save us from this pandemic, this and that. But no, after so many preachings and so many convincing statements by the popes and church and whatsoever, the officials of the church, there was no such relief to the mass, and therefore it was a challenge to the religious beliefs. It was also a major factor, I find, that for the mass, the thought process, even the intellectuals got motivated towards thinking fresh. Now we can come to the point of the fall of Constantinople, that was in 1453 AD. I have given you two pictures. You can see in the left one, where we see that it was attacked and it was massacred, it was destroyed, destructed, and I've given you only to observe that how this has been reconstructed later on, but somehow it was a great, I mean, this was the heat point where we find that by the invasion of the Turks, the Greek scholars who were residing there in Constantinople, they spread all over Europe and brought with them invaluable Greek manuscripts. That's the important aspect of this fall of Constantinople, that the scholars had to flee and they were with invaluable Greek manuscripts. Now, the discovery of these classical models, resulted in the revival of learning in the 14th and 15th century. Now, see this picture. This is an illustration of anatomy. Now, I have intentionally given this picture before you, even if this is a study of anatomy, there is medicine, but it sees. I can simply relate this picture with a statement of Gautam Buddha, who says that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Now, this is the study of mind. The illustration of mind. So, psyche, mind, human intellectuality, human wisdom, that was explored by the intellectuals of that period. It means they could find, this study shows that human mind is not only restricted, I mean, it should not be restricted only to the church, only to some religious beliefs, only to the dogmas, only to the practices that have been going on since antique time. So it was something to think fresh. This hints that mind has a great scope to go beyond what it thinks now or what it possesses now, what knowledge human being possesses now. That's the point. We can relate it to. So now, and there only we should go to Peter Deer, who argues for a two-phase model of early modern science, right? Where we find that he takes it, first of all, a scientific renaissance in the 15th and 16th centuries, the initial part, and later on it was called a scientific revolution. So it was Mr. Mary Boss Hall who gave this two-phase model of early modern science. Number one, that is a scientific renaissance, and the second one is scientific revolution, which was in the 17th century. Now, let us find some basic essence of Renaissance, that why people started to think scientifically, because we cannot directly go to discuss on the scientific discoveries or the inventions or the technological updates. Before that, we need to understand the platform, the foundation that evolved into the scientific temperament of the period. Now, when we go to the essence of Renaissance, we find that man discovered himself and the universe. This was the first essence we find. And the second is man, it's related, correlated. Man, so long blinded, had suddenly opened his eyes and seen. So, what does it mean? This certainly hints that the flood of Greek literature that was there after the fall of Constantinople, that led us to a swift understanding of a new world. It revealed a new world. It fascinated us towards newness, towards freshness, and that's why the world of poetry, philosophy, art, literature, science, everything was influenced by it. And along with the revival of learning, the discoveries that took place, because we can see, to take name of some very important discoveries, that is Vasco da Gama, he circumnavigated the earth. We can say the name of Columbus, who discovered America. We can name Copernicus, who discovered the solar system, and so on and so forth. But here it proves that man was limited, restricted to see something very particular, very certain, But now, human being was fascinated towards the outer part of the world they knew. And the third essence is the emphasis on humanism. That's very important, because it means man's concern, human's concern with himself as an object of contemplation. Of course, it started in Italy by Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. But when it spread to other countries of Europe, it took a vast, shape where people took interest on the proper study of mankind, and which was earlier not there. Right. Now, it certainly correlates with some other subordinate traits, where we find that rediscovery of classical antiquity is a very major subordinate trait, where particularly of the ancient Greece, the traditional bound Europe, who had forgotten the liberal tone of old Greek, right? Earlier in the antique world of the Greek wisdom, we find that they were quite liberal. They were quite liberal, but people had forgotten the spirit of democracy, the spirit of human dignity, we can say. So that was revived, and with the revival of interest to go back to the past, or to read, to study, to investigate the Greek classical antiquity, the new spirit of humanism, made its impact on the Western world very, very emphatically, we can say that. Now, the second aspect, subordinate trend, is the discovery of the external universe and its significance for man. Again, an important aspect. As I told you earlier also, that the gauge earlier was inward. I mean, even writers directed their gaze inward. They were more interested in describing what they knew only. But here we find that now the interest was driven towards human personality and the things which were related to the outer world. I mean beyond our wisdom, beyond our knowledge, beyond our position of understanding. So that's an important aspect. Second, third, we found that enhanced sensitivity to formal beauty and cultivation of the aesthetic sense was also a subordinate trait, where people started to think aesthetically. The formal beauty, beauty was redefined, we can say. The things which were named or entitled as beautiful, that was taken as past, and that certainly took a major portion of the thought process, which later on went to the point of the peak of Renaissance. Then we find men came to be regarded as responsible for their own actions. Very important. Where we find that instead of looking up some higher authority, as it was done in the Middle Ages, this period guided human being to think that whatever we do, we are responsible for our own actions. So action was given priority. Action was given importance or significance in one or the other way. Now, the characteristics of Renaissance, if we talk about characteristics of Renaissance, we find that the first characteristic is the printing press. Mind it, this is very important because it was, it helped the discovery of the printing press helped reproductions of texts, and the renewed focus on studying them helped trigger one of the biggest discoveries in the whole human history, we can say. Because see, if we simply discover, we cultivate, we know, we widen our horizon of understanding, but if it is not circulated, then there cannot be a mass movement. Renaissance was a mass movement, and printing press was a vital point and to be discussed when we discuss this particular period. The other is the intellectual movement. Mind it, this was an intellectual movement because the evolution of Renaissance was of course a movement which gave us a method of thinking, which I find, it gave us a method of thinking. It gave us to think something for some new outlook, which was of course underpinned when in the earlier days. When we talk about art, we see that Renaissance art was heavily influenced by the classical art, and patrons made it possible for successful artists. There was patronage given to the artists, to the scientists, to the people who were involved in writings, and so on. Music was also innovative at that point of time, because it had also it had also the patronage of the metropolitans, other than the church. Earlier, music was totally under the patronage of the church, but later, the city dwellers and the rich, they became patrons of music as well. Now, when we talk about literature, we find that it was also characterized by humanist themes, and a return to the classical ideals. We might have discussed deeply on it in the other lectures. We find that how I can simply take an example of Hamlet. It's a good example, because themes like human agency, life's non-religious meanings, and the true nature of man, we find all these factors embraced in Hamlet, who is found to be an educated man. When we talk about society and economy, this is also a characteristic of Renaissance, where the most prevalent societal change we can see with the fall of feudalism and the rise of the capitalist market economy. So this is also a major characteristic of the Renaissance. Religion also, due to a number of factors, including the Black Death, which I discussed earlier, the rise in trade, the development of middle class, and the temporary move of the papacies from Rome to Avignon. These influences were responsible for re-emergence of classical texts, where people used to study the text and find out newer outlook of religious texts. So this was also an important factor. We have lots of new inventions in the field of geography, because people traveled a lot, and this traveling widened the study of geography, and Earth was known with great improvement in knowing the trade routes. Explorers sailed off to chart new lands, and we found that new world was also discovered. If you name Columbus, who found in 1492. And he was also successful to circumnavigate the globe. So this was also a major area which influenced this period. And the core of today's lecture is science and technology, or physical sciences. That was also a very important characteristic of the Renaissance. Now, as I discussed earlier also, that the turning point of Renaissance is the evolution of the discovery of the printing press. It was invented by German Johannes Gutenberg, and this allowed information and knowledge and newer findings to be circulated and distributed among the wide audience. So this helped to spread new scientific discoveries as well, allowing scientists to share their works and learn from each other. So this was a factor of newer exchanges of ideas and findings and knowledges. So this is the turning point, we can say, where the history of world, this is noted as the turning point of research, of understanding, of discoveries, and to add newer outlooks to our own intellectuality. Now, if we focus on the important developments of the period, we find these are the important areas where developments were major or majorly recorded. That is alchemy, which is in our today's language we call it as chemistry, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, geography, physical and material science, and technology. So these are the areas where we find that there were major contributions by the people, I mean by the intellectuals of that period. Now, if I start with alchemy, this is the study of the transmutation of materials through obscure processes, of course. And one of the main aims of alchemists was to find a method of creating gold from other substances. Now, Paracelsus was a very renowned alchemist of that period. Let me give you an example of India also. Till 1954, there is a slab, outside, if I remember, the Department of Chemistry in Banaras Hindu University, where Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru once visited in probably in 1954, and the scholars of that university, they came to see him, and they said that we have lots of ancient knowledge, or we can say which is basically said pseudoscience by the Westerners, but that's not completely pseudoscience. That we can transmute mercury to gold, and that was a process which was simply done before the Prime Minister, and it was written and recorded that mercury was transformed or transmuted into gold. Now, by this we can simply say that the exchange of ideas through different trade routes, and as we know, that India had a great trade relationships with the Middle East and with the West also through the Arabs, since antiquity. And Indian wisdom was not unknown. I mean, in that way, people heard name of India, but it was, of course, a distant land. It was, the roots were not developed. The roots were not, other than the Silk route or a navigational route from, the Western Ghat, the Malabar coast. We had least routes to reach out to that place. So that's why there was, least communication. But we cannot deny communication. We cannot deny the truth of trade relationships with India as well. So alchemy was also an important aspect. If you talk about science. Now, astronomy. Astronomy of the late Middle Ages, it was based on the geocentric model. This is very important to note. You must know it, that it was based on geocentric model that was described by Claudius Ptolemy in antiquity. Probably very few, practicing astronomers or astrologers actually read Ptolemy's Almagest. Almagest is a very important book to have ideas on astronomy, but that was less read by people, which was later translated into Latin by Gerard, and in the 12th century. So people started to the astronomers, the interested people in the field of astronomy, they read these books at that point of time, and this underwent a revolution in thought known as the Copernican revolution. And Nicholas Copernicus, this name is very vital in the field of astronomy, who proposed the heliocentric system. So this is a paradigm shift in the field of astronomy. Sorry. Where earlier it was geocentric, as I told, that the Earth is at the center and the sun is revolving around it. But no, this was Nicholas Copernicus who revolutionized, by proposing the theory which is called heliocentric theory. In which the planets revolved around the sun and not the Earth. So this was an important breakthrough in the field of astronomy. And astronomers and mathematicians like George Pathak and Cardinal Bessarion, these people went on studying and publishing highest levels of astronomical studies, which gave newer newer understanding in the astronomy of the period. Now, if you talk about mathematics, Archimedes, we have heard the name of Archimedes and his proofs in the area of parabolic segment, in quadrature of the parabola. This is a renowned treatise which was written by Archimedes, but that was least read by people. Again, this was reread, it was reinvestigated, and people, this quadrature of the parabola, this inspired work on, and in the 15th and 16th centuries, and the Greek mathematicians were read again. But let me say one more thing here, that not only the Greeks but some Islamic scholars were also read, at this point of time, especially in the field of mathematics, because these were copied and studied in both Byzantine culture and in Islamic centers of learning. So translations of these works began already in the 12th century. Okay, but it was circulated, it was taken to the mass, to most of the people after the the invention of the printing press or the printing machine. So mathematics was also. Now, why I am taking this as a science? Let me clarify. Mathematics, as I take geography also as a science. Of course, nowadays in the universities, geography is considered to be a subject of arts, but basically it was a science. And in many of the universities of the world, they offer degrees of science, that is BSc or MSc in geography, because there are lots of scientific activities which are done, practical and pragmatic activities are there in the field of geography. So it's certainly, so mathematics, geography, these were all considered to be important factors of science. And let me say one more thing, that there was no segmentation of knowledge. I mean, a person who was knowledgeable in mathematics might be knowledgeable in astronomy or physics or chemistry, alchemy, or medicine. So, study or knowledge was somehow, as if an organic whole, and it was not segmented like now, that we simply say that I am a man of literature, so I can't say something on science, or I can't say something on medicine, this and that. So knowledge was basically free, and people had full choice to choose their area of interest. So that's why we took mathematics and geography also in this area. Now, when we talk about medicine, there was an increased experimental investigation in the Renaissance period, especially as I mentioned in the initial picture, that human mind was studied. Anatomy was a new area of interest for the researchers, and it advanced our knowledge of human anatomy, of course. Now, major areas of development in medicine was development of modern neurology. I mean, the nerves were studied, the diagnosis improved at that point of time, complete description of the circulatory system. Mind it, I'm talking about 14th and 15th century, till maximum to 16th, when we find the complete description of the circulatory system, and understanding the medical sciences beyond opium and quinine. These two were basic medicines at that point of time, opium and quinine. But people discovered many more effective drugs other than opium and quinine. We can name William Harvey also. William Harvey is a very important name who gave a refined or complete description of the circulatory system. Now, texts, if I talk about useful texts in the field of medicine, that is Materia Medica and Pharmacopoeia. And Materia Medica is still studied in MBBS courses, let me say you. And irrespective of any field of medicine, medicinal studies, that is allopathy or homeopathy or naturopathy, whatsoever, any person who is interested in medical sciences or human anatomy may refer, and obviously they refer to Materia Medica. Now, I talk now about geography, where know, in the history of geography, we find that the key classical text was Geographia of Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century. Find it. After it was translated into Latin in the 15th century by Angelo, it was widely read in manuscript and went through many print editions after it was first printed in 1475. Now, here there is a there is an important input that after studying or going through such editions, I mean the antique editions, people got the interest. I mean those texts had the input that the world which is presented or put forth before the reader now is not limited or restricted to the text. I mean there are many more things to be reached out, and therefore new discoveries were done, and which revealed shortcomings in classical knowledge also, and they opened European imagination to new possibilities. I've given you a picture of cartography because map making was a vital inclusion in the field of science, and geography also took this, the designing, the art of designing, or the mapping, that was a major part of the study of geography, and it flourished a lot. And the information provided by Ptolemy, as well as Pliny the Elder and other classical sources, okay, they were found to be, in many times, they were found to be in contradiction to the lands explored in the new age discovery. So they had explained some piece of land in a different manner, but after reading that, people had the idea to reach out to that place, and they found something new. So here, the inclusions in the newer texts were interesting, and newer discoveries were recorded, and this thirsty to learn, this thirst to find out newer pieces of land, or to go to excavate the earth, or to find newer routes, explorers were interested, and they sailed off to newer lands. And here the name of Columbus is very significant, who discovered the new world in 1492, and Ferdinand Magellan became the first person to circumnavigate the globe in the early 1500s. Now, when we talk about technology, here we find that technological advances in the Renaissance period were really amazing. When I will, in the later slides, you will find I've given you some pictures that the things which we use nowadays were somehow founded at that point of time, and it certainly paved the way of a paradigm shift in the field of science and technology. So, but let me initiate the discussion of technology with the note that the most important invention was printing press. Once again, let me say, because unless and until people could read it, it wouldn't have be of so much importance and significance. So thereof we can derive the social impact, where we find that with the increase in the amount of technology, people started moving from the rural areas into the cities, which increased the size of cities tremendously. And let me say you that here, as we say, that necessity is the mother of invention. People shifted from the cities, to the rural areas, from rural areas to the cities, and due to the overpopulation, hygiene was a concern. And therefore, lavatories were invented at that point of time. Flush toilet was invented in the Renaissance period, which we simply use nowadays. So some other major inventions is let me record here. That is printing press, wood block printing, pendulum, eyeglasses. These are very common things nowadays, but these were discovered. These were the major inventions of the Renaissance period. Telescope, very important. Through telescope only Galileo could see the rough surface of moon. He could see, the space and many more stars and constellations and planets, and he could derive many more things to invite researches for the other and later scientists. Microscope, very important. Microscope in the field of medicine. Microscope was, see, eyeglass, telescope, microscope. What is this? These three items basically hints that by the invention of lens, because lens is very common in these three items we find. So by the invention of lens, these devices and tools were discovered. So lens is an important aspect. A major invention of that period. Barometer to measure the atmospheric pressure. Musket. This was a muzzle-loaded long gun. I'll show you a picture of musket in which grenades or bullets were fired to a longer range. So this was for the safety while people went to sail off distant lands. Thermometer. We have a thermometer at home. Most of the homes have thermometers, and that thermometer was discovered in that period. Watch. We have wristwatch and wall clock, and this watch was discovered at the time. Flush toilet, as I discussed to you, that while people shifted from the rural areas to the city places, flush toilet was then invented due to necessity. Map making, that is cartography, very important. Map making is is an important contribution to the field of science and technology. Parable, that is sailing ships. So sailing ships were also discovered at that point of time. Astrolabe, very important. This is this is an instrument. I'll show it to you later on. What is astrolabe? This helped the sailors to find the latitude of the Earth, because see, sailing on water is not easy. You will simply move to a place where you were not destined to. So to know the latitude, to study the Earth and its different places, those people used astrolabe. It's called mariner's astrolabe. Basically, it is known as mariner's astrolabe. So this is a two-dimensional model of the celestial sphere. So this was also used. Submarine. We boast of submarines nowadays, that we have this many of submarines, and that was of course discovered at that point of time. Slide rule, mechanical clock, cannons were also used. Wrench, screwdriver. I think most of us have a screwdriver at home. So wallpaper, scales for weighing, the measuring wheels, batkara. So that was also discovered. Parachute, very important. Parachute. Blood transfusion. Blood transfusion was also in the field of medicine. We find that this was also invented. The process was invented in the Renaissance period. If you talk about some three important, the major scientists of the Renaissance period, we name these three. That is Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Johannes Kepler. Now, the major contributions of Nicholas Copernicus, he placed, as I discussed earlier, that he placed the sun at the center, that is heliocentric, from geocentric. So the concept of heliocentrism was now at vogue because Copernicus, proved it, that the sun is at the center of the universe rather than the Earth. You can see that all other planets are, moving, revolving around the sun. So this was totally a new concept, And in distant motionless stars also, Galileo, he observed those distant motionless stars as well, other than the planets. So Galileo, he built the foundations of Copernicus' work. Mind it, Galileo could discover his telescope, and he could see the roughness of the moon surface, the stars, the difference between the appearance of planets and fixed stars, and he published a treatise called the Starry Messenger. So this is it was in 1610. which is again a very important book, which invited other stalwarts of the period to investigate further, and therefore through the Galilean telescope and other instruments and other observations by Galileo, Copernicus could find out that no, he could propose the heliocentric theory of the motion, right? So he is Mr. Johannes Kepler, who is responsible for creating Kepler's laws of planetary motion. Mind it, we often say that the Earth or the other planets revolve around the Sun in an orbit, and that orbit is in oval shape. It's not circle; it's an oval shape. So this credit goes to Johannes Kepler. This is a major contribution, mind it, because the total total scenario of the study of the knowledge we had tremendously changed through this, because earlier it was geocentric. The total study focus was different, that the Earth is in the center and Sun and other planets and other heavenly bodies are revolving around it. This is geocentric. No, these people contributed in the same period, and they clarified the notions, and they discovered newer nations. The outlook was totally different, and by his planetary, laws of planetary motion, how a planet moves, what is the shape of the orbit, all this, the longitude, the latitude, these studies were also contributed by Johannes Kepler. And therefore, so it didn't stop here only. When we talk about Renaissance, we should also talk about the successors. Yes, we have Isaac Newton, who discovered the laws of motion. We all know that a gravitational pull, simply sitting in the green field and seeing an apple falling down, people prior to Isaac Newton might have seen all these activities, but it was Newton who had found that this was gravitational pull. The Earth is a great, is a heavy magnet, and it creates a magnetic field, which certainly catches everything towards it. It pulls everything towards it, and that's why we can stand erect. We stand erect. We walk properly. We do not fall down. This is all because of the gravitational pull, and the moon has its own gravity. The Earth has its own gravity, and therefore these things are distantly placed in the space. So these are very important contributions, and of course due to the invention of the law of gravity, inertia, and calculus, which exist everywhere. We cannot take these as simple contributions. Then we have a great man, Mr. Albert Einstein, who was a great physicist of the later period, who was again influenced by Isaac Newton. So the tradition of being influenced by the Renaissance scientists or the scholars or the researchers continues. That I mean to say. Now I'm giving you some list of technologies and tools which set off European artifacts and inventions. Crank and connecting rod. These are mechanical items. We have connecting rod in many of the things, even in our houses also. We have parachute, mariner's astrolabe, as I said, lifting tower. We have linear perspective in drawing. This is in engineering drawing. I will show you a picture of. About patent law nowadays too much. And there are webinars and seminars and conferences and discussions on patent laws, and we laws cases against our patents if it is violated. But this was initiated the Renaissance period. Double shell domes. Again, I will show a picture of double shell domes. How two domes were constructed. So this is a science. You cannot simply you cannot associate directly it with art. No, it has a science that how will you fix it so that it will sustain for decades and centuries. Bastion fortresses, again, this is I will show you the picture. Bastion fortresses, which is it contains some star-like dimensions of fortresses, fort, durg. So it was to protect the important institutions, the palaces, and important buildings. So fortresses were made in a certain figure, and that figure was highly secure, and people could not, outsiders could not enter inside due to this invention. A dry dock, how can you imagine that a dock will be dry? Yes, this was invented at that point of time. Dry dock. The dockyard is always wet, but no, dry dock was conceptualized at that point of time. Floating dock which is floating. Newspaper, we read newspaper every morning. So this newspaper, the discoveries were circulated through newspapers, and newspaper was an invention of Renaissance period. Important. Air gun also. Cranked Archimedes screw. I will show it later. Some of these items I will show you. The cranked Archimedes screw is very important. We use this screw, churi wala screw in India. We say it like churi wala, in which we have churis. It penetrates into any hard surface, and it locks. You cannot open it very easily. So this was invented with the use of Archimedes lock. Okay. Cranked reel in textile industry, it's highly used for winding skeins of yarn. Brace for carpentry. In the field of carpentry, we use brace. Cranked wheel hoist. This is also used in cultivation, in irrigation. Paddle wheel boat. I will show you a picture of paddle wheel boat, how wheel boats were used, which were paddled. So rotary grindstone with treadle. This was also a grindstone with a rotationary item attached to it. Geared hand mill. A hand mill was there, which was now attached with a gear. German grenade musket. So these were some tools. In mining and metallurgy also we find lots of discoveries. People open surface mining. This was also invented at that point of time. Mining was geology. One is geography. When we study on the about the surface of this earth, geo means in Latin, geo means earth. That is study of the science. So when we study about the surface or the upper part of the earth, that is geography. When we go deeper into the earth, or beyond the earth crust, that is geology. So that's the science which associated with mining and metallurgy, because metals are there inside the earth. So these all were an associated field of science, and it was explored deeply. We find the invention of blast furnace enabled iron to be produced in significant quantities. Blast furnace, which we see the sky of Jamshedpur being orange sometimes when coke is put inside the blast furnace, and this blast furnace, mind it, was discovered in the Renaissance period. Finery forge is the process of iron making, melting iron and then making into bars and pig iron, transforming into wrought iron. So these processes were also there in the Renaissance period. Slitting mill, mechanized the production of iron rods for nail making. We can simply say, see, nail requires a lesser quantity of iron. So unless and until you slit it, you cannot make nails. So smaller items, for making smaller items with of iron or of any metal, we needed slitting mills. So slitting mills were also there. Smelt mill, that increased the output of lead over previous methods, that whole area. So these were certain. Now let's go see some pictures of technologies, tools, and devices. Is it visible, Sake? Hello.
Yes, Manoj bhai, it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here we can see the double shell dome, which I discussed. Now only that you can see the two-story, double shell dome. This is a miracle, a very magnificent discovery of the period. Now this is the Bastion Fortress. You can see the outer layer. Find the outer layer. This is in a, like a jellyfish or a star, like a, this fortress is in, in a particular structure which is very tough to attack or to enter. So this type of technologies were used. We can see a floating dock here and the dry dock as well. See, and why this dry dock was used, when some submarines or some other ships needed some repairment, those were lifted to the dry dock. How? So the water was flashed, and through the pressure of the water, the submarine or the ship was, installed on the dry dock. So it was used for repairment of navigational devices and ships and things associated with navigation. Here we see blast furnace. So this was also an invention of the 14th and 15th century era. A slitting mill. You can find slitting mill how nails are being made from iron rods or iron rails. So smaller items of iron were made through slitting mill. We have crank. I was talking about crank. You can see this crank used for fishing. A crank is being used in a boat and in the sea or in the river. You can use it for fishing. This is the connecting rod. We use it in automobile engineering also. This connecting rod is connected with the piston. In engine, if you study engine, you will find that the piston is associated with the connecting rod, and it creates a motion, and thereafter the ignition is there. So this is very important in the invention. Parachute. You can see the parachute here and the mariner's astrolabe. This is the item which I was telling. This is a spherical item which helps the sailors to locate the latitude of the Earth, and they can they could calculate that this is the right direction of their destination or not. So this was very helpful, mind it, because sailing was an important activity of that time. People sailed off to distant places to find out newer ideas and newer inputs regarding the Earth, regarding humans, regarding culture, regarding animals, regarding everything we are linked with. Now, this is the Archimedes cube. You can see it, how that Churiwala, it is prepared based on the Archimedes law. This is Archimedes cube, and this is the cranked reel which is used in the field of textile. Okay, in the textile industry, it is still used to keep the yarn properly threaded. Cranked reel. This is the paddled wheel boat and the grenade musket. This musket is a gun. You can see the hollow cylindrical item which is positioned in the front, and there the bullet or the cartridge was pushed, and when it was triggered, it reached to a distant land. So air gun, grenade musket. So big grenades were used to secure the institutions and for security purposes. This is the technical drawing. I was talking about the linear drawing. The left one, you can see that such fine drawings were there. I mean, these were formally used at that point of time, and it is still used in engineering drawing. I have seen engineers using, and in the first year of engineering courses nowadays, engineering drawing is a paper in which the would-be engineers they try hard to get the skill of drawing. I mean, engineering drawing on drawing sheets, and that is very important for the field of engineering. Now, let us discuss something on on some amazing accomplishments. It led to the discovery of both new world. I mean, what are the accomplishments? If all these discoveries were recorded, if we went through so many findings and newer knowledges. So ultimately, what was our accomplishments? The accomplishment was the discovery of a new world and setting of scientific laws explaining the physical world. This was an amazing accomplishment. And secondly, we can say that the Europeans discovered two whole continents, mind it, that is, you know, the Asian part and America. So these were not even known by the Greek and Roman idols, but the Europeans could discover, these two important parts of the globe. Again, the careful use of a scientific method of thinking based on reason led scientists to rewrite the structure. Mind it, this is again important. When you know something, you go through some scientific method, your findings needs to be rewritten. And when they rewrote, the structure of the universe changed. The idea of the universe, the mysteries were solved, and which was really very puzzle for the humanity. So those mysteries were solved by these rewritings of earlier findings. Humans now had a nearly perfect understanding of all motions on Earth. This is a major accomplishment, that the motions were well known now to the humans. And the other amazing accomplishment is humans were opening a new era of limitless possibilities. I mean, this was not the ultimate or the crux. Rather, you can say that this, tended human beings to this invited human minds to discover more, and it continues till date. You can simply say the birth of modern science was only the Renaissance period, where study in each and every sphere of human life. I mean, the field of astronomy, in the field of science, in the field of technology, and there is a difference in science and technology. Let me clarify. Science is a study of the basic rules and principles and laws of this earth. But when you apply that, that is technology. So application of science is technology. So we can simply say, even in the field of botany, zoology, geography, in every aspect of, every stream of physical sciences, this was the birth of modern science. You can simply correlate the journey of possibilities through these two pictures, where in pre-Renaissance we can see that the things were not clear. By the picture itself, you can understand that the knowledge regarding the earth or the seas or the oceans, the waters, was not clear. People investigated; they had limited knowledge. But in the post-Renaissance period, we find clarity is visibly there. We have lots of things which are totally on record, clarified by the scientists and the computers. So what happened thereafter? Again, I say that the discussion on Renaissance science or physical sciences remains incomplete if we leave this portion, where we find that it does not mean that it was limited to 14th and 15th and 16th century. No, it influenced a lot and I can say that it is still influencing, because the newer discoveries are still based on those earlier discoveries. So we find basically that the instant influence was that European social system, the social scientists now got influenced by the scientists. This is a major observation what I find, that the social scientists, they found that we also need to deliberate on the old or outdated systems, which are no more feasible, no more applicable, and therefore thinkers wanted to find a new Newton for the social science. This is an observation, that they also found new Newton for social sciences. The scientists wanted new Newton, means imagined and anticipate, we can say, and that certainly envisioned the movement called Enlightenment. So this is the aftermath of Renaissance, which invited intellectuals to think of enlightenment. What else happened? We find
Sorry
that
to
people
interrupt,
began
sir.
to apply some.
Sir, your voice is
Hello?
breaking.
Hello?
I think maybe a network issue, sir.
Yeah, is it not clear? Am I audible?
You're not audible, sir.
Now?
Yes, you are audible, Manoj, right?
Hello?
You are audible. Manoj sir, you are audible.
Okay, fine. So, wait. I had to. Yeah, here we find, sir, that people began to apply scientific laws and reason to human behavior, government, society, economics, and religion. So, this is a major accomplishment. Again, we can say that the application part was there. So it motivated people from different spheres of life to apply those scientific reason, scientific rationality in different fields. That is called human behavior, government, society, economics, and religion. Again, we find that the power of human reason, that is self-confidence and individuality, was discovered. That man can do anything. We can go beyond possibilities. I mean, beyond our present observations, beyond our present understanding. So the power of human mind was estimated. Spirit of knowledge and free public discussion. These are the influences, the broader influences of science and technological advancements. And there was a challenge to the church, a challenge to the government, the torture, taxes, and war. So there were questions put before the war. And certainly it inspired American and French Revolution, which we cannot deny. Now, we should also discuss on the influences of scientific discovery on literature also, as the total, we all are basically from the field of literature. So what influences we find on literature? Let us see some of the important influences. I'm not saying that all the influences, but some important influences here. Now, stories of voyagers, these were ample in numbers, thereafter. There were lots of stories of voyagers because Englishmen especially they sailed off to distant places, and they of course sailed for commercial activities or for newer discoveries. But as they penetrated into remote lands and saw strange and romantic descriptions of nature, they found different peoples, they found different cultures, they found different lands, and these were like fairy tales for them, and they found these important to be noted and recorded. Therefore, we find lots of stories of voyagers, which created spirit of discovery and adventure in the in the literature. Hackett was, voyages and discoveries. Again, this is an important, contribution. The voyagers in the in these texts were scholars who could search for newer knowledges, and they could produce newer literary artifices. So we can get the name of Parkus also. His pilgrimage book is very important. We can take name of Shakespeare's Tempest and Pericles. Why? Because in Tempest we find that the accessibility to spirits. These are some figures of speech and metaphors and symbols who which were somehow influenced by the scientific discoveries, and there are ample evidences of scientific influence in Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, in Hollis's esteemed scholars' Ancient Mariner also. But the name itself suggests Ancient Mariner. So it is somehow having the influence of the scientific discovery of the Green period. The second aspect of scientific, the scientific influence on literature was the spirit of rational and scientific quest. Again, here we find that Bacon's works he had a great scientific outlook. He realized nature in a different manner. He realized power of God can also be taken through reason. So God or godliness or church or religious beliefs, these were also investigated through the lens of scientific reason, right? So Bacon, of course, is a high priest of this attitude, but he never he was always spirited with the rational inquiry. That's very important, but we find it. And in the theme of Paradise Lost also, we can look at that the fall of man due to his refusal to obey reason. So this we can simply relate it to the influence of scientific discovery. That Milton is telling that as man refused to obey reason, that's why it was the fall, which was just. And the other influence was the essence of romanticism, that is remotefulness, wonderful places and beauty. Beauty was again taken into consideration. So this is also a major influence of scientific discovery on literature. So concludingly, we can say that it was the Renaissance was a time of transition from the ancient world to the modern, and provided the foundation of the modern thought processes. It was totally a rebirth of everything man knew at that point of time, and we can simply find the developments of science, art, philosophy, trade, but all incorporated into an organic whole, so that the discovery in totality could be located, and which could give a platform for elemental study of modern culture. I can simply say that in terms of observation of Renaissance. So, thank you, all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful lecture, the very informative lecture. Now I open the platform for the students, the participants. If they have any question, they can ask. They can either type or they can unmute and ask the questions. Any participant? You may unmute or you may type the question. Any question or any observation if you have. There is a question, sir, in the chat box by Rumaisa Mehboob. She asks, the Renaissance in Middle Ages of Europe is a great emancipation of humanity, and why did it can advance the development of science and technology?
But if I could understand,
she asked, can it advance the development in the science and technology? Maybe she's asking.
As I told you that all the findings and the devices and tools I discussed today, and the principles and scientific laws, those are the basics of the modern or the present science and technology. If you simply contact any scientist, he or she cannot reject outrightly that those were the foundational findings of the science and technology we see now or we study now. Those were, and by the items you can simply find that don't we use crank till now? Don't we use ships till now, the submarines, and many things, blast furnace, So those findings, of course, technological advancement is something different, but scientifically, as I said you, that technology is the application of scientific studies, scientific discoveries. The scientists find something, and when it is applied, that becomes, technology. So of course, technological advancements is a continuous process. We can simply apply the scientific findings in different manners and ways to mean it, to reach out to mass, to be meaningful to many more people. But the base, the fundamentals, the fundamental principles remain the same.
There is one more question, sir, in the chat box by Kundan Kumar.
Okay.
He asks, what impact Renaissance had on American society
Okay.
and literature
See,
as well?
of course, when we talk about Renaissance, it's not limited to European countries. Let me clarify it first. It simply inspired the total globe, and irrespective of any field. If you go deeper into the study of this period, you will find not even a single area of our study remains untouched in respect to the studies made by the scholars of that period. So when geography, when cartography, when astronomy, these type of globalized inventions and fields of discoveries were there at that point of time, we cannot deny the influence of influence on the American society and literature. And we find literary texts written by American writers which are based on sailing, which are based on findings of seas, the underworld of seas and oceans. We have texts on that, and it certainly, and nowadays when globalization is a day-to-day practice, we cannot say that any part of the globe remained uninfluenced by it.
Yes, sir. We can take one or two more questions, sir.
Okay.
Ankita asks, what were the conditions for the teaching of linear perspective techniques in Renaissance?
Please repeat it. Where she is?
She is
What
asking
were the
teaching of
conditions
linear
for the teaching of linear perspective techniques in Renaissance? Okay. See, this is a field of drawing in which the sketches were made, and the total structures were first of all designed on piece of paper, and it was influenced by the art of cartography. The geographists, they made important contributions in the making of maps, and they influenced the scientists who were interested in making physical items and infrastructural things. So now you can, for example, earlier there was no concept of making designs of houses, right? But right from the time of Renaissance, we find that any infrastructure was first of all designed on a piece of paper, and that designing was then erected, and we could see a total built up infrastructure. So of course it was a practice which was taken from the scientists of geography to the field of science and technology.
Okay, so we are taking the last question, sir.
Okay.
Kumar Yashwant asks, he would like to know your views whether ancient Indian physical sciences had any influence over development of sciences during early or later Renaissance period.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and my answer starts with yes, because in terms of civilization and any other aspect, Indian total discourse of study is quite ancient. And when I talk about the Silk Route, when I talk about the Arabic route or the trade relations with the Arabs, as you all know, that zero was discovered by Aryabhat in Patliputra, which is now Patna. But that was transferred to the Arabs, first of all, only through the traders. And then the Westerners knew it from the Arabs. So how can we deny it? That, and we have ample influences also. We are not now in a position to say, go into the details of that. But of course, even in one of the novels of Amitabh Ghosh, we find a very fine description of the influences of ancient Indian studies on the Arabs, and that is, the Calcutta chromosome. We find that in some other novels also, and the total field of mathematics and astronomy was very strong in India. So we can boastfully say that we have influenced. We had trade relationships with them. We had commercial relationships. We had very long, antique Silk Route connections with them. So they might have got influenced by Indian intellectuals as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. There are many observations. They are very, very happy with the lecture. You can see in the chat box, we can even find students are still demanding again to repeat the 10-15 minutes. They liked so much. But definitely, Priyam Raj, it is not easy for a teacher. He has been continuously speaking for last 1.5 hours. So teachers are also humans. Uh, Sir, thank you so much. Now
Thank you.
we can move to the other part, the last part, that is the vote of thanks. I would like to invite our head, Dr. SMAA Ibrahim sir, to propose the vote of thanks. Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Manoj sir. It has always been a delight listening to you, because the way you involve your enthusiasm and the way you involve your commitment to your lectures, this is always a very highly appreciating thing. So whether we are listening to you virtually, and we used to listen to you physically also in our college and some other places also, so it has always been a great experience listening to you, beginning from the Renaissance etymology and taking us down to showing the pictures of Renaissance invention was certainly a very enriching thing today. Um I hope that the way you have associated, or rather intertwined, the Renaissance inventions and the Renaissance discoveries with giving those as examples from literature. For example, you referred to Coleridge, you referred to Defoe, you referred to all those novels and texts based on Renaissance inventions and discoveries. So certainly this will hope a lot. I mean, this will help a lot to the students. So I, on behalf of all our teachers in the Department of English, Dr. Mrs. Neha Tiwari, Dr. Bashudhara Roy, Professor A.K. Dash, Saket Kumar, and of course on behalf of the whole Kareem City community, the participants here who have joined us from different colleges basically. So with the deepest core of our heart, we are extremely grateful for taking this time out, and of course we are extremely grateful and delighted to have you here as our guest speaker. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I convey my regards again to all of you. Karim City, I find Karim City College as my family, and your I don't take it as an invitation, rather a loving a loving hint to get a time to interact with you all. And this is always a great experience for me whenever even I visited the campus or virtually. This becomes very special when I get associated with any act and event of Karim City College. So I appreciate your efforts, sir, and thank you all of you to having trust on me.
Manoj bhai, we have Kalyani Rajan. She is teaching in a Delhi college. I mean, in a
Okay.
college at Delhi University, and we
Okay.
have invited her also as a guest lecture.
Okay.
She is expressing her views regarding your lecture in the chat box, so you
Thank you
can
so
see
much,
that
ma'am.
also there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I read
Thank you.
it. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, participants, and of course, if Kalyani ma'am, if you're still here, thank you so much.